Welcome to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. Our team's goal is to present science-based information about gardening and all things nature in New York's Hudson Valley. Our hosts are Master Gardener volunteers for the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene counties, midpoint along the Hudson River Valley. So if you're interested in gardening or nature or just nuggets of information about what's happening outside your door, listen in and enjoy the conversation. Whatever the season, we'll always have something to talk about.
Hi, I'm Tim Kennelty.
And I'm Jean Thomas.
Welcome to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley.
Our guest today is Kyle Bradford with Hawthorne Valley's Farmscape Ecology program. We learned about Kyle when he gave a presentation at a meeting of the Master Gardener volunteers of Columbia and Greene counties. It was all about ants, and we heard from several Master Gardener volunteers wanting to hear more via the podcast. Welcome, Kyle.
Thanks for having me.
We're kind of giddy about ants. We really have a lot of questions for you, so we can't wait.
Could you, Kyle, give us a brief description of your training and education and maybe how you landed in Columbia County, New York?
Sure. I got a bachelor's degree from the University of Vermont in environmental science. I was mostly interested in climate change mitigation and sustainable agriculture. Really, insects weren't on my radar. So I was looking for a job after college and internships and came across Farmscape Ecology program's internship ad. Was really interested in their work looking at agriculture and nature. So what does nature do for agriculture and what does agriculture do for nature conservation? So I applied and got the position and got thrown into a bunch of insect work. And I actually stayed on with the program for 3 years. Our technician at the time, when my internship was ending, she decided to move on. So I kind of stepped into that role. That first winter, my job was to learn how to identify the 3,000 ants we had collected over the summer with the field guide that we had. I got really interested in ants. I ended up moving to the West Coast for a few years, coming back for graduate school on the East Coast at Antioch University New England, where I got a master's in conservation biology. And I was studying ants in the pine barrens and other dry habitats in western and central Massachusetts, and then came back to Farmscape Ecology in 2022.
Excellent. So we're familiar with Farmscape Ecology. In fact, we're going to have the folks on the podcast soon who wrote the new guide on from the Hudson to the Taconics. It mentions you in the acknowledgments page, which is very cool. So obviously they think highly of you. And there's a lot of information on the ants in there as well. So are ants actually everywhere? Do we have ants all over the place? I know there's a lot of ants in Columbia County and Greene County, but are ants everywhere?
Yeah, ants are everywhere. They're on all continents except Antarctica, and they're in most terrestrial habitats. So even wetlands can be super productive for ants. Sometimes wetlands have massive numbers of ant nests, nesting in sedge hummocks and in other dry areas in wetlands. But yeah, they're in forests and fields. Some nest in homes. They're really everywhere. And a recent paper came out in 2022 assessing the biomass of ants in the world. And they found that the ant biomass is more than all wild mammals and wild birds combined. Ant biomass makes up about 20% of total human biomass. So they are super abundant and really just everywhere.
So is that good news? Because we've heard about like an insect apocalypse is not affecting ants. Is that true?
We do have a number of ants that are of conservation concern. Even in Columbia County, we have 5 red-listed species that are threatened. So the IUCN, International Union for the Conservation of Nature, puts out these globally threatened species lists. Probably for the generalist species, they're probably doing fine, but it's really the more specialist species that are having a hard time still.
They're kind of at the bottom, I guess the bottom or the top of the food web, right? I mean, in terms of there's a lot of animals that eat ants, I assume, so it's really important to have ants in the world.
Yeah, so they feed woodpeckers, like to feed on carpenter ants and standing dead trees. Bears will eat ants. Ground foraging birds like flickers eat ants. And ants are omnivorous. They're preying on all sorts of insects. They're foraging for dead insects. So they're really great at cycling nutrients, dealing with all the dead biomass that we have. They're also great seed dispersers. So actually, some estimates say 30 to 40% of forest understory herbs are ant dispersed. So these plants have evolved an eliosome covering. It's a lipid protein-rich covering on the seed that the ants are attracted to, and they find the seed, bring it back to the nest, so the seed gets transported away from the parent plant, and the ants remove the covering, and that's what they're feeding to their larvae.
Phenology. You've got the 5 endangered types. How do you know they're endangered? And what is it that they do that's so unique to them? You know with each one what it is that they do that fills a specific niche?
The IUCN red listed list for ants is kind of old. I think the assessment was done in 1996. Interestingly, all of the New England and northeastern IUCN red listed ant species are all parasitic. So they depend on a host species to complete their life history. In general, parasites are going to be less abundant than their hosts, probably because of their more complex life history is part of the reason why they're so rare.
So does that mean the hosts are going away and that's why we're losing the ants, or is that too simplistic?
Potentially, if host populations are low, yeah, then that would affect the parasites.
And what would be an example of a host for a particular ant? Like, are you talking about a plant or an animal?
So I'm talking about another ant species. Yeah, and these are
Cannibalism.
Yeah, we're getting into the sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, these are some of my favorite ant species. There's a number of different types of parasitism in ants. One is called kidnapping, where ants actually raid their host species. And so it's a different species of ant, but they actually steal the developing young, bring it back to their nest, and it raised, and in some cases does most, or if not all of the work around the colony.
It's like slavery.
Yeah, that's another term. They do use slave-making ants is another term. I try to use kidnapping as a more appropriate. Because it's really not analogous to human slave-making. It's a different species. And
it's kind of epic, isn't it?
It is. Okay, now there is a specific type of ant that's only been seen in Columbia County?
Not just Columbia County, but in the Northeast. Columbia County is the only place in the Northeast where the species has been recorded. So the ant's called Formica prociliata. Sorry, it doesn't have a common name.
We thought it went up at that.
So it's a Midwestern species. It's known from the easternmost record before we started looking in Columbia County.
So it's common in the Midwest?
Not super common. I think in Wisconsin, Michigan, it seems to be more common than other parts of its range. But in Ohio, the easternmost record before we started looking in Columbia County was Ohio. And in the Ohio Guide to Ants, they say that this species is rare there and occurs in glaciated prairies.
Okay, so it's the terrain that is their habitat?
Yeah, they're only in Columbia County. We only find them in dry meadows.
Okay.
So
I mean, do you study, like, how did this happen? How did they're kind of only here in Columbia County and the East Coast? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the short answer is we really don't know. I wish I'd love to look into this. I mean,
Bit of a mystery, right?
Yeah, it's totally a mystery because as far as we know, it's disjunct. It's isolated from the Ohio and other Midwestern populations. You know, how long has it been here? Is it anywhere else in the Northeast? So there hasn't been a whole lot of ant collecting in other parts of the Hudson Valley, other parts of New York, but there's been a fair amount of work in New England and it hasn't shown up there.
Huh. So it's not like you're just finding it because you're doing a lot of research, because I know we have a lot of data here from Farmscape Ecology.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be that way, at least for New England. And we have done some collecting in Greene County, in Dutchess County, Ulster County.
But not finding.
And haven't found it. The odd thing is that it's not uncommon in Columbia County. So we know it from more than a dozen sites.
Huh.
It seems to be doing pretty well where it is at the site. You know, it's not just like one nest. There's usually multiple nests, and it's fairly populous. It's not like a inconspicuous species. It's fairly aggressive and can make pretty large colonies. It's super associated with dry meadows, often with little blue stem grass and native grass.
But there's a lot of little blue stem in Columbia County, and there's quite a few dry meadows too, I assume, right?
Yeah, there are.
Well, now, is there a geological factor in that?
Definitely The hilly terrain, thinner soils are contributing to that. And there might be something with our area has conserved more open land than some of the surrounding counties. Some of that hilltop agriculture has still continued, whether it's even for just views. People like to have that views of the Catskills and have kept fields open for longer, or, there is still quite a bit of ag going on here. They're not prime ag fields. They're pretty marginal. We know the ant from 2 sites at Hawthorne Valley, which are grazed occasionally, so it can deal with that disturbance.
Tell us their name again.
Formica prociliata.
I like the Formica part. But Columbia County also is an incredibly forested county, right? There's a large percentage, especially in Lower Columbia County, is forested. So are you finding completely different species there?
In the forests, yeah, Columbia County is such an interesting place to study biodiversity because, we have a pretty large climatic gradient between the northeastern part of the county, like New Lebanon and Canaan, have a much colder climate than the southwest near the Hudson. And the soils are different. We get a little bit more sand in the west, hillier, higher terrain in the northeast. So, yeah, we have some species that have more northern distributions that come into the northern part of the county, but we don't see them south of like Ghent, say. Or we have some species that are restricted to the western part of the county because of the more sandy, warmer site. And we have some species that are creeping up from the south. A species that wasn't recorded in New England around 2012 when the field guide came out for New England ants. We had it in around Hudson, recently found in Kinderhook. So it's a southern species
So what's your hypothesis? Do you think climate change is affecting these migrations of ants?
Yeah, potentially as the climate continues to warm. Yeah, I think some species will expand the range. Some might be pushed out of the county. So we have some species that are more cold tolerant.
See, I think this is fascinating. It's kind of depressing, but it's also fascinating because if these ants, particularly ants that you're talking about, have a special place in the ecosystem, so that means other animals will be affected too if they leave or come, I assume. There might be more flickers if there's a particular type of ant or something like that.
Yeah, and it was interesting. We did some work in Greene County at kind of a higher elevation site, about 2,000 feet. And what was interesting is that the most common forest ant that we have in Columbia County was absent. We didn't sample a huge amount. We just did like 3 plots at the site, but couldn't find a phenogaster, which is this woodland alien.
Phenogaster.
I have a phenogaster at my house.
I bet you did.
Are they like a winter ant?
No, they're kind of lanky. They're seed dispersers. So they're actually the main woodland herb seed disperser.
So what kind of plants are they dispersing? Are they good plants?
Yeah, many of our spring ephemerals, our spring wildflowers are ant dispersed. So wild ginger, violets, trillium, bloodroot, trout lily. Even some sedges are ant dispersed.
So I have a lot of bloodroot. Does that mean I've got a bunch of ants that disperse the seeds?
Potentially.
Huh, I like that. It's about me.
It's all about Tim.
So I have a really basic question. So if I'm out there and I'm on my deck and I see an ant walk by, that a normal ant is that it can be something common that I'm seeing, and should I be concerned about that at all? A typical person, how do they view ants, and should we be viewing them in a positive or negative light?
Obviously people don't want ants in their house, but and that's a common occurrence more so in the springtime when ant nests are just waking up and they're looking for food resources, so they might come inside. But once the summer gets going, they'll leave and forage elsewhere. Ants don't destroy homes. Carpenter ants they won't nest in sound wood.
Right.
It needs to be rotting.
Right.
So
That
usually
would be my porch.
All right. This is where I haven't stepped in.
Go ahead.
In the summer, in my kitchen, different times of year, like you say, I have different little tiny ants, and then there's little middle-sized ants, and they come and go. If the house wasn't there, would they be there?
Yeah, they would probably be there. They're nesting outside potentially and either using your house as a satellite nest and foraging, you just using it to gain access to more food. Often the small black ant in people's homes is called the sugar ant, Taponoma sessile. It's a tiny, tiny ant that actually, if you pick it up, it smells kind of like rotting coconuts.
Huh.
So yeah, I use all senses to. I want you to find your ants.
So you're out there doing sniffing it.
Sometimes, yes.
That's some good to know.
Yeah, because we have the sugar ant, but also we have some species that smell like citronella. So that, if you smell that citronella, you've already got it down to a group.
Is that a defense? Is that a defense?
Yeah, it's a defense, kind of an alarm pheromone to.
Mosquitoes don't bother them.
So you talk about ant nests, which kind of creeped me out, but I guess all ants have nests, yes?
What kind of makes ants unique among their relatives in the Hymenoptera, the order Hymenoptera, which includes the ants, wasps, bees, sawflies. Ants are all eusocial. It's a highly social organization.
What is eusocial?
Yeah, it just means that it's a very high form of sociality. So
EU social?
Yes, EU. So what that means is that they have overlapping generations in the nest. They have cooperative care of the young, and they have a division of labor. So there's a reproductive caste, and then there's the worker caste, which actually, for the most part, does not reproduce.
There are no solitary ants.
No. So they're all live.
Solitary bees and
Correct. Yeah. So that's the difference between.
That is unique, right? I mean,
Yeah. There are other organisms that are eusocial, like termites are one example. Yeah, it's fairly unique. And yes, we do have eusocial wasps and bees, but like you said, the majority of them are solitary nesting.
and I had an ant farm when I was growing up. I don't know if you did, G. You probably did.
Yeah.
I felt like it was a little bit cruel. Were those what kind of ants were those in my ant farm?
I don't know.
He has,
But
I've stumped him.
I've heard that to keep that business going, they would sell you just worker ants, and
It didn't last.
Yeah, just when the worker ants died.
That's kind of horrible, right?
also, I think that's kind of merciful.
I got a lot of guilt here.
If I were the ant, I would rather have a short life than years and years in slavery. When we contacted you, we always try to find like real scientific stuff to talk about other than this nonsense that we usually indulge in. And you referred us to your favorite field guide. It's a field guide to the ants of New England by Ellison, Gotelli, Farnsworth, and Alpert. How many people does it take usually to write one of the field guides?
There's so many ants, right?
Yeah, they describe over 140 ant species just in this part of the continent. How many are there maybe out there that haven't been discovered yet?
Yeah, I think there's probably at least a few. I mean, even since the publication of that guide. So in 2013, I had an opportunity to join Aaron Ellison on a trip up to Baxter State Park in Maine, where Mount Katahdin is, because the park has very few ant records. And just a week of sampling, one day we found a nest on the side of the trail, a mound, and sure enough, that was a New England record. Hadn't been recorded from the region.
Had this Maine species been found elsewhere prior?
Yeah, so its distribution is more western.
So a lot of the new things you find are actually just relocated?
Not necessarily. Yeah, and that one in Maine, it also had been found in Nova Scotia, so it may have been from there. At least Formica prociliata, the Midwestern ant, its biology is such that I doubt it was human transported, just because of how specialized it is in its habitat.
Right.
And it's also probably a temporary social parasite. So what that means is that it needs a host species to found the nest. So a queen of Formica prociliata needs to infiltrate a host species nest, kill the host queen, and she'll take over that nest.
The drama.
Shakespearean.
Yeah,
So
it's of a totally different species.
yeah, of a related Formica.
So she goes in disguise in there, and they
Yeah,
sneak in.
pretty much.
Wow.
Sneaks in. Ant communication is chemical based, pheromones, and so sometimes temporary social parasite queens will kill the worker and smear the contents over them. And so,
Perfume.
It's amazing. Oh, really? I mean, is this unique too in ants as far as the drama of it that they take over nests and they're parasitic? Or are
there-
there other species like that?
yeah, there's all sorts of parasitic things out in nature. We have a colleague who studies parasitoid wasps, which lay eggs in their hosts and
Oh, like
soon.
the worms.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, there's all sorts of
Huh.
parasites. Yeah.
But we wonder why humans have gone so wrong. Maybe this is why, because we're all parasitic too. I don't know.
Oh, I think parasitic describes us pretty thoroughly. And in fact, how much of the rearrangement of all these ants is human made? We go dig up whole
Right.
environments and then we.
Or they might hitch a ride on a car or truck or
Yeah.
something like that.
At least in Columbia County, we have only 2 species of non-native ant. One is super common. It's called the pavement ant. And that was probably came here a long time ago, maybe on ship ballast or something from Europe. So yeah, there's from cargo, from soil being transported, there's always a risk of an introduction. For ants, it can't just be like one worker that gets transported. It would have to be a colony or a colony, yeah.
And those are, you said the pavement ants are non-native, but very few non-native ants, I assume.
At least in our region, yeah.
Okay.
We've only found 2 in Columbia County. There is a European fire ant that's in Berkshire County, but so far we haven't seen it.
Yeah, but even the anti-fire ant. I have a question about one I was just reading about called the Manhattan ant. You know about that?
I did recently hear about this.
And it's just showed up and it's taking over Manhattan.
Yeah,
Is it on Broadway or something?
in medians of street meetings. And
Yeah, it's thriving in cities.
And is that like a big problem that ants do that and take over?
potentially this ant, the Manhattan ant,
I love that.
was seen in 2011 and they actually thought it was a different species, but just last year someone came out with a paper to actually identify it as this European species, but it is expanding its range through into Long Island, into New Jersey. So yeah, it could.
It's adapting its behavior too, no?
In Europe, it seems to do pretty good in urban environments. I think what's troubling is that it also in Europe lives in more natural habitats like forests and fields. So
it could be disrupting ecosystems. Wow.
It could disrupt other native species, other native ants. One issue with that ant is that it really likes to tend aphids and other insects that feed on plant sap. So potentially having an effect on the like street trees in New York City.
Something else to keep us up at night.
Let's turn this around a little because we obviously just want to know everything. Tell us your favorite couple of ants or couple of ant stories.
I really like the Amazon ant. It's a kidnapping species that's also pretty rare, and we've found it only, I think, 2 or 3 times in Columbia County. But it's a brilliant shiny red, and if you see these things on raids, it's amazing. And they have sickle-shaped mandibles that have
that's scary stuff, huh?
Yeah,
Didn't they do movies about them?
There's a lot of great ant bee films. Yeah, these have serrated edges on those sickle-shaped mandibles, and they're really specialized for combat and for raiding.
Do they bite people?
They'll try if you pick them up. If you get it on your like more calloused areas, they're not going to do anything.
But they're specialized for taking over other colonies.
Yeah, for raiding them, and they are completely dependent on their kidnapped host. They can't feed themselves. They can't do work around the nest. So
there's an autocracy lesson in that.
Wow, that's wild. I mean, it's like it's more and more interesting as we go.
Yeah. What else you got?
We have a seed harvesting ant, Pheidole pilifera. It's more common in the western part of the county where there's a little bit more sand, but they have minor and major workers. So the major workers have huge heads. I mean, it's almost as big as the rest of their body. It's really funny looking. And they use that head to block the nest entrance from potential predators. And they also, because they feed on seeds, their big heads have these huge muscles and they have really strong mandibles, so they can break open seeds to feed to the larvae. So that's a really cool one to see.
What's their name?
It's Pheidole pilifera.
Wow, no wonder you got so interested in ants when you first started. I mean, I assume that all these fascinating stories that really captured your interest and why you went deeper into this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And they're just amazing to look at under the microscope. I mean, they're really beautiful in all these different morphologies. Some have spines, some are tiny, some are larger, some are yellow, red, black. So there's a nice diversity of forms.
Does the color mean anything in terms of like defense, or I mean, why? I mean, do we know?
Yeah, some of the red formica are pretty aggressive compared to the ones that are more conchlorious, one colored, like black, silvery.
I think
black.
that's a warning, like it is with plants.
Yeah, I think it's probably a warning that they're a little more aggressive and they spray formic acid. And
Okay,
So we probably could talk to Kyle forever, right?
we're gonna kidnap you.
Right. Jean is a kidnap, and she has a big head too, by the way. Anyway, we probably need to close, don't we?
Go ahead.
Do we want to ask our last question we usually ask Kyle?
think we-
Is he prepared? I'm not sure.
He knows.
Well, with all this drama and Shakespearean stuff with ants, maybe it's an appropriate question, but the world is kind of a scary place right now. So tell us, when you work and when you do your field research, what gives you hope during the day?
yeah, so we just finished up hiring our seasonal interns, and every year I'm so impressed by the applicants that we get. Just super passionate young people who are interested in insects and conservation and ecology. So I think the future is super bright. That gives me a lot of hope.
Oh, that's great. I'd love to hear that. So you're seeing a lot of interest in this area, but also, I assume, just interest in general in ecology.
Yeah, and
Excellent.
even in the public, I mean, the public is getting more and more interested in insects and understanding that they're such a viable part of our ecosystems. Everyone who supports our work, who's listening to this podcast, I mean, that gives me hope too. Just people are interested in conservation.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking your time. Man, this was so fascinating.
And time just flew, so that means we have to invite you back.
Or we'll just show up at your house and ask you more questions. I
This-
think so, right?
Carpools. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks to our listeners for listening in.
Yeah, this is super fun. Thanks for having me.
That concludes another episode of Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. We would like to thank Xander Powers and Devin Connolly from the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene Counties for production support. And a special thanks to our listeners for joining us on this episode of Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. You can find links to any of the topics mentioned in this episode at our website at ccecolumbiagreene.org. Comments and suggestions for future topics may be directed to us at columbiagreenemgv@cornell.edu or on the CCE Master Gardener Volunteers of Columbia and Greene Facebook page. For more information about CCE of Columbia and Greene, visit our website or visit in person during business hours at our campuses in Hudson or Acra.
Cornell Cooperative Extension provides equal program and employment opportunities in accordance with applicable laws.